Hello and welcome to the first ever SmackDown vs. Raw podcast. I am your host, your resident marksman, the professional psychopath, future WWE champion, TJT, and I am here to talk about Raw and SmackDown for September 5th and 6th, respectfully. We're going to talk about the highs, the lows, what worked, what didn't work, and above all else, we are going to settle once and for all here on this show who won this week? Who is the undisputed champion, Raw or SmackDown, for this week in WWE? Now let's get right to it with arguably the number one show in the eyes of Vince McMahon, as well as chronologically Monday Night Raw. So Monday Night Raw actually started with a confrontation between Mick Foley and Stephanie McMahon. Now, some people may feel, or they're probably going to feel some sort of way about this and how, they promised that going forward, the shows wouldn't really be about the authority figures, and that has not been true for either show. It's been a little bit more so true for Raw up until recently. We didn't really get a lot of Stephanie McMahon and Mick Foley, especially in terms of drama between them or any kind of conflict, really, until more recently, especially this Monday. Now, ordinarily, I would be kind of also focused on that, and I've voiced my opinions briefly on this channel, not really getting that much into it, but I've definitely voiced it on Twitter while live tweeting at Atamagazi. Please give me a follow and also send me presents. I've made my opinion on Stephanie McMahon as a character very clear in that she definitely undercuts the wrestlers, the superstars, the talent. It seems like anytime she's in any kind of feud or rivalry or giving any kind of promo with somebody else, they just can't get one over on her. She always has to be in control, and it's very... However, I'll tell you what I liked. I liked the complexity. And this is what Raw really has going over SmackDown so far, especially from last week to this week. They are the more complex show right now. They have a lot more layers going on. There are a lot more gears working on, and it's definitely a lot more unpredictable. I will say that because of the events of, the last few minutes from last week to going into this week, I don't think anybody really knew what was going to happen. Were we going to see Triple H again? What does this mean in terms of, okay, who's face, who's heel, what is happening? And now the character of Stephanie McMahon is now in a kind of gray area. I think she still definitely had some heel tendencies going in to last week's show. But now that Triple H is definitely a heel, Kevin Owens is definitely a heel, and it seems that, they are committing to, okay, Stephanie wasn't in on it, she has no idea what's going on, so she's either there playing face and being very convincing in her turn, and then she's gonna, pull the wool over everyone's eyes and go, haha, it was actually me all along. Which, is kind of predictable at this point. It's kind of similar. It reminds me of, it was me, Austin. It was me all along. And we all have opinions on that reveal, that storyline. But honestly, I think they are going to try and go with this. And this is the more interesting route to go in that now Stephanie McMahon kind of is in a gray area where, I don't think she's face. I don't think she's really a good guy character now. I definitely don't think she is. But now it's like, okay, there's a definite heel, and it's not her. It's Triple H. And them being married, them formally being on the same page, and now they're definitely not. Her definitely severing ties with Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is definitely face. Her kind of butting heads occasionally with Mick Foley, but then, recognizing when to support him and when to back him up. It's a lot more complex, and that's good. I like the complexity of Raw. I like that it's unpredictable. I like the different layers. I love that they're dipping into. Sorry, I cracked my knuckle. I love that they're getting into the history between Mick Foley and Stephanie McMahon. It definitely provides more reason as to why, of all the people, Mick Foley is in charge of Raw with Stephanie instead of just about anybody else. So it gives that point that I think never really got resolved. It has always been a kind of question mark. It gave that a little bit more validation. But I like the dynamic. I like this. This is definitely a point in Raw's favor over SmackDown. I definitely like the dynamic between Stephanie and Mick more than Shane and Daniel Bryan. There's absolutely there's no story or anything going on with Shane or Bryan. Like, there's just, they're both definitely on the same page, so they might as well just be one person. And it really makes me wonder, why is Shane on SmackDown Live all the time? He and Daniel are the same person. They have exactly the same thoughts and exactly the same beliefs. And that's just, I mean, admittedly, we wanted less drama between authority figures, but at the same time, if they're going to have the exact same opinions, why do we need both of them? You know, and for a while, we only got Mick Foley on Raw. So, I mean, Raw had the right idea. It's like, okay, Foley runs the day-to-day. Foley's the GM. Stephanie doesn't need to be on there that much. Now, with recent events, we're probably going to see her a little bit more. But again, this is more so supporting the storyline. It would make no sense for Stephanie to not be here after what happened last week. So anyway, that's enough of the beginning. I thought the recap of last week was great. You know, those guys and girls that edit the footage for WWE they always hit the mark. They always get me nice and pumped, nice and hyped. Everyone loves them. They do fantastic jobs. The opening ceremony was great. Again, adding layers, adding complexity. I will say I'm worried about Kevin Owens having to stay heel because the crowd loves Owens. They're so happy for him to be champion. They even had to go out of their way to address it during the ceremony, which I knew would happen. I knew it was going to happen. Where they're so happy for Kevin Owens. Honestly, I think he should have played it up a little bit more instead of just cutting it dry. But he's the one in charge of his character, and I was begging for this on my Sunday Smack Talk. I was begging for him to be his own heel, keep his character intact, not just become a puppet for Triple H, and that's exactly what they've done. I like it. I like the complexity now that, he's still kind of best friends with Jericho. When is that gonna, crumble? Because we all know it's going to. Both Jericho and Owens are nowhere near trustworthy with partners. So that's only a matter of time. I'm going to get to the ending of Raw eventually, when I get to it, because I'm going to go basically in order for both shows. But it's another wrinkle for next week. Roman Reigns was also wronged by Triple H last week. And there's another wrinkle. It's unpredictable. There's a bunch of things happening at once. Raw is honestly the more interesting of the two shows in terms of the main championship storyline right now. Raw definitely has the more hype and the more buzz and the more layers. But it's still a competition. I'm gonna save my final decision for later on. Not saying anything as far as Monday Night Raw has got it in the bag so far. Because this episode of Monday Night Raw was not last week's. Last week's, again, most of the show last week was fine. It was good. It was okay. It was just the last 30 minutes of the show blew SmackDown's entire 2 hours the next day out of the water. That was not the case this week. And, this week is this week. Last week was last week. So moving on, let's talk about Bayley versus Charlotte. This kind of weirded me out because now this is another example of WWE being unclear and kind of being indecisive. Because I could have swore that when Bayley debuted a few weeks ago, Mick Foley said that they had a match for Clash of Champions. Clash of Champions, not Clash of the Champions. It's very confusing. I don't know why they changed it from Night of Champions. Whatever. I could have swore they said that they were going to have a match for the Women's Championship at Clash of Champions. I did not go back and look at it. I don't think it's really all that worth it, but as I'm going to get into a little bit later on, now apparently that's just not the case. And they're like, nope, never happened. Nope, no, they're not having a match. They're not having a match at Clash of Champions. But then at the same time, it felt like they could have saved this match. But honestly, this is kind of what had to happen at the same time. And I get what people are saying, and I was saying the same thing when I was live tweeting at Atamagazi. Why are we getting this match on free TV? Isn't this a championship match? Why are we getting this match? And then I also, playing devil's advocate, thought, well, they only have 3 women. Well, they have Nia Jax, and now I just learned, oh yeah, that's right, they have Alicia Fox too, but neither of them are in the Women's Championship picture. They're clearly saving Nia for some other time. But they only have Charlotte, Dana Brooke, and Bayley, and Charlotte and Dana Brooke are on the same page. So this match, unless you just wanted to not have women's matches on Raw, which I feel like a lot of people wouldn't like that, it didn't really have much of a choice now, did they? There are only so many combinations, and so many times we can see Bayley beat the crap out of Dana Brooke, and Dana Brooke is no threat to anybody right now. So they had to do it. It was an average match. It looked like Bayley, she may not have been hurt. I don't think it was planned, but she kind of tweaked her knee trying to do a move between the ropes, and if anyone was following me on Twitter, they would have seen me react to that, just like, no, God, nobody else needs to get injured. Nobody needs to get injured. WWE needs to stop with the fake injuries, or just tell them, like, ham it up. I don't want to believe that somebody else is going down right now. I don't need that. I don't need that stress. I don't need it. As far as the match, it's an average match. It's okay. Bayley got a win over Charlotte. Somewhat dirty, but also kind of clean. So she has the right to challenge Charlotte for her championship at some point, even though I thought they had already covered that and that she was going to challenge her, but I digress. Following that, we have Bo Dallas in a squash match. They gotta add more to his character or something, because right now, I don't care. I could care less about Bo Dallas. I need to see him in matches. In matches, I, as well as probably most of their casual audience, did not watch NXT when Bo Dallas was NXT champion, and he was a big deal. So they need to find a way to build him back up. It may be with these squash matches. Honestly, and I kind of just don't care. So, it is what it is. Next, we have the pop of the week. Yes, Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho. Now, on paper, we should have all been excited to see Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho. However, Chris Jericho has not really been... He's been interesting. He's been funny as a character. He always adds more. He's very adaptable. He has new catchphrases every month. But in terms of being a threat in the ring, his credibility is not the best it's ever been because he constantly puts guys over. I mentioned, oh wait, no, I deleted that video, but I did make a video that ultimately got deleted that I talked about Neville versus Chris Jericho last week, and I supported the decision to have Chris Jericho go over, even though Neville is a great young talent and could have used that, that little bit of a nudge, that push. But Jericho, he can't always lose. He is a legend. He's a future Hall of Famer indefinitely, and he needs to look credible sometimes. And again, on paper, we should have been expecting exactly what we got. But I feel like Chris Jericho has had a hit in credibility, and this match definitely reminded everybody of why we need to stand up and pay more attention to Chris Jericho inside the ring. Because this was the best match on WWE this week. It was. It was dramatic. It was great in terms of in-ring work. Seth Rollins looks to be doing a really good job of transitioning into a face and not just changing like a light switch. Right now he's very upset. He's very angry, but he's also laser focused. I like that. He still has a few bit of his heel tendencies because, again, it's a transition into a face. It's not just outright going, hey, I'm happy and, I love the fans and all that. No, he's still very much the Seth Rollins character, but adapting to the circumstances. It was a great match. Awesome match. And it's the pop of the week. That's about all I can say. Next, we have Cesaro versus Sheamus. And, I mean, it was a good match. I like the psychology of the way it started, and Cesaro definitely trying to end it quickly because he's hurt. I personally wouldn't have minded them taking a week to, let Cesaro heal. I don't know if the injury is real, but not as severe as they're making it out to be, and they're just adding it to the story, or if it's completely kayfabe. Either way, now it's going to be kind of really hard to buy that Cesaro comes completely from behind. Now with, bad shoulder and a bad back to beat a perfectly fine Sheamus. I think they mentioned that they have their next match tonight, Wednesday, in a special event in London or something like that. Yes, I'm actually reading it right now off Bleacher Report. They have a match tonight in London, so we're gonna see. Cesaro's gonna win because how are they not gonna use all 7 of these matches? And how buried would Cesaro be if he lost in a clean sweep? It's not gonna work out that way. But the match itself was a lot of storytelling and, not as good a match as we've seen between these two, but it was good enough. It was fine. I have no problem with it. Enzo Amore and Big Cass versus the Shining Stars. Now, I've been very critical of their promos. I honestly think sometimes they tend to drag. Though the crowd is very hot for them, and rightfully so, they are entertaining in short spurts. But like I mentioned, some of their promos tend to drag. This one was almost too long. It was almost too long, but ultimately they were funny, they were entertaining, and then they, boom, wrapped it up and then got into the match. I support the idea of giving the Shining Stars a win because they need the tag team scene to actually be deep and have layers and have more than one tag team at a time seem like a threat. Now that the Dudley Boys are gone, you got to start. I mean, who else do they have on Raw? They have the New Day and the Club. They're in a feud. I'll get to that. And then they have Enzo Amore and Big Cass and the Shining Star. I feel like they need a name or something. But, well, maybe I don't need to say their full name. So Enzo and Cass. Enzo and Cass versus the Shining Stars. And then, other than that, I mean, Sammy and Neville were a team for a hot second. I thought they were going to actually keep going with that, but I guess not. I mean, Sammy was talking about how he's directionless. Go after the tag team championships with Neville. If they're still championships, it would actually kind of lend some credibility to the fact that, you know what? Rusev is nowhere to be found. I can't get his belt. Kevin Owens, I don't even want to get into that, so I'm not going to go after that belt. The tag team championships are a belt, and I'm going to go for that with my friend Neville here. But other than that, I think there are only 4 tag teams that I can think of off the top of my head at least. So you can't have one of those teams be completely jobbers. So yeah, you got to start building up the Shining Stars. I like that, at least I think they're going in this route, that the Shining Stars are smart heels. They're opportunistic heels. I like that, because they're not going to be the strongest. They're not going to be the fastest. They're not going to be the most exciting. Might as well, make them nice, smart, arrogant heels. So, I support that. The Nia Jax match, nothing we haven't seen before. But, and I'm just gonna jump ahead and talk about the Alicia Fox edition here. I recently said on Sunday Smack Talk that, and if you haven't, go watch it. Shameless plug is shameless. Shameless, not Seamus. I've been saying that Nia Jax needs something else. She needs actual matches to kind of get better, to gain confidence, because the one thing that I have bad to say about Nia Jax, I am a fan of Nia Jax. I like her look. I like her style. The one thing that I have critiqued is that sometimes she looks a little unsure, a little hesitant, a little kind of shifting around, looking around, like not really knowing exactly what to do. So, and I think you just kind of have to put her in matches with experienced superstars. And now they're doing that with Alicia Fox. I thought it was hilarious that moment where Alicia Fox accidentally smacked Nia Jax upside the face with a box and broke character immediately. Completely forgot they were live and was just like, oh, snap. I'm sorry. Nia recovered it gracefully and just shoved her onto the table. And that was funny. And now, unfortunately, we have our botch of the week. Where do I start? This segment was not funny. This segment was too long. This segment did not need the old day to actually come out and be real things. This segment shouldn't have existed. The club should not have this gimmick. God. If you want people to be jokesters, you have joke tag teams. You could let New Day do this. They're jokesters. You could let Enzo and Amore do this. Sorry, Enzo and Amore. Enzo and Cass do this. I mean, I think ultimately that's what Enzo and Cass are probably going to end up doing at some point, is doing skits in addition to their jokes and their promos. You could even stretch it and have, Shining Stars do this type of stuff eventually if they become more of a joke tag team. But not the club. Not this, the group of badasses that come from Japan. They're world-class tag team championship level competitors. Next. Next we have Darren Young versus Jinder Mahal. I don't care. I don't care. They've given me no reason to care about Darren Young. And you know what? Guess what? I don't care about Darren Young. I care even less about Titus O'Neil, except for the fact that he was slipping and sliding all over the place in that suit and those expensive shoes, and it was funny, and it reminded me of the far superior moment where The Rock had some slippery shoes and delivered the best people's elbow of all time on a SmackDown episode many, many years ago. And most of you will know what I'm talking about. Then they have, I think they're doing the same thing with Braun Strowman here that they're doing with Nia Jax. Because next we have Braun Strowman versus Sin Cara in a glorified squash match. King Ross on What Culture WWE has already pointed this out. Yes, the referee should have restarted the count. But whatever, I didn't really care about this match anyway. The thing that they're risking, they've already crossed that line with me with Braun Strowman, and they were in danger of doing it with Nia Jax, and instead they're going ahead and putting her into a feud with Alicia Fox, which I'm fine with, and I support that decision. But they've already crossed that line with me with Braun Strowman, and that I just don't care about this guy. He's not interesting. He's just big. He has no personality of any kind. His theme is generic. He's generic. I just don't care. So, next we have Sasha Banks trolling the WWE Universe a la Mark Henry 2014? 2013. Yes. Because that was the year of WrestleMania 29, I want to say. I'm sorry, I'm like halting the entire progress of this podcast because my OCD won't let me move on. Yes, that was 3 years ago, 2013. Anyway. Honestly, I wasn't too interested in the promo. I had a feeling that was what they were going to do. So I kind of ruined it for myself in my own head. Honestly, they need more women. They need more women on this roster. I'm going to reiterate that here. 4 women does not make up a women's division on Raw. They shouldn't have split up the women for Raw and SmackDown unless they were sure they were either going to call up a bunch of women from NXT, get some from who knows where, I mean, alumni or from other promotions or whatever. I don't care, but Monday Night Raw has, I'm sorry, not 4. Well, there are 4 women in the title hunt, but altogether, Raw has 5 women. SmackDown has 6. Sorry, 7. Eva Marie is suspended. Whatever. But, I mean, big picture, they're going to do what they're going to do. It's over. Might as well just get on with it. This brings me back to what I alluded to earlier when I talked about Bayley versus Charlotte. Bayley versus Charlotte earlier on. They have similar names. And that now Sasha Banks and Charlotte is going to happen at Clash of Champions. I don't know. Just seems kind of lazy. And seems rushed. Like, why not just keep Sasha out? Why not have Bayley versus Charlotte at Clash of Champions, have shenanigans happen, and then have Sasha surprise return and then invoke her rematch clause? If anything, that would be a lot more interesting. They might be saving that match, but I don't know how you can when they only have 5 women on the roster. 6, sorry. They have 6 women on the roster. I don't know how you can afford to save like a 3 out of 4 horsewomen match for WrestleMania if that's what they're doing. They're probably going to do Nia Jax versus whoever's women's champion at WrestleMania. But ultimately, I just think it was weird. It was weird to all of a sudden just go, hey, remember Sasha Banks? Yeah, she's going to be facing Charlotte Clash of Champions. I think it would have been much cleaner for them to save this, not go the Mark Henry false retirement route. Save this for her returning at Clash of Champions after Bayley nearly wins the championship or wins it and it's reversed, or some sort of shenanigans where then we set up a triple threat at the next pay-per-view. But that's just me. That's just me. So for the last of the Monday Night Raw matches and moments, we have Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens for the 100 billionth time. And wrestling fans don't really care, but I feel like casual fans might care. The match itself was okay. I mean, it's kind of hard to have a bad Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens match, but they've definitely had better. Honestly, the more interesting thing to talk about is what happened after the match, in that Roman Reigns came out and people relax. I mean, I think I'm I'm very close to making a shooting range about Roman Reigns again. I'll kind of follow up to my previous Shooting Range podcast episode covering Roman Reigns that I made a while back. I might do an updated version shortly because I'm getting real sick. I'm getting real sick of Roman Reigns getting booed out of the building just for showing up. This is his job. This is what he's paid to do. You can't just boo him the second he comes on the screen. Are they going to put him into the match at Clash of Champions? No, they're not. And there's a bunch of ways they can get out of that next week. One of which they're probably going to do. Either Chris Jericho is going to screw him out of the match, and then they're going to have Roman Reigns versus Chris Jericho, which, you know what, is going to be a great match and a great feud. Or, hey, that's right, Roman Reigns never stopped feuding with Rusev, and Rusev is probably going to return next week. So Rusev is going to then screw him out of the champion. But it's not going to be a triple threat at Clash of Champions. And even if it was, that doesn't make it a bad match. Roman Reigns is a good wrestler. He has good matches. So is Seth Rollins. So is Kevin Owens. Why are you booing? I honestly don't care if Roman Reigns is still in the world title picture. I don't. I don't understand the people who get so upset that he is. Just because he's in the title picture doesn't mean that he's gonna win the title. Right now, what do you want? Rusev isn't there right now. He's got married again in Bulgaria and is on his honeymoon right now. What do you want him to go against Neville? Have a feud with Neville? Because I mean, honestly, now that I say it, I wouldn't mind seeing that match. But at the same time, it's not really believable. Right now, the only believable thing other than the world title picture is going up against Rusev. Because anybody else, he'll bulldoze. And that's not just, booking that. I mean, that's not just because of the size thing. That's in storyline. You gotta think in WWE logic. Roman Reigns, right now, is just a main event person. Or, at the very least, upper mid-card, which is what Rusev is. So, yes, it makes sense for him to still be in the world title conversation. The universal title conversation. It makes sense. It's WWE logic. If you're not going to subscribe to WWE logic and you want them to cater with what you want to what you want and exactly how you think, guess what? They've never done that. They've always done what's best for business. Sometimes that lines up with what the smart fans want, and sometimes it doesn't. So get over it. If you don't like it, stop watching. But I'm really sick and tired of people hijacking, of all these smart crowds hijacking shows, deciding to boo Roman Reigns because they're so cool, and because, yeah, we're exercising our free right. We bought the ticket and we can do anything we want. No. You bought a ticket to see everyone there. You didn't buy the ticket for Kevin Owens. You didn't buy the ticket for Seth Rollins. No, you didn't. You bought it for every single person that comes through that curtain. So, I'm sorry. Deal with it. If you don't want to, don't watch. If you don't want to, don't go to the shows. But again, like I said, I'm really close to doing another Shooting Range podcast about this whole entire subject because it just infuriates the crap out of me every time it happens. I'm not even the biggest Roman Reigns fan, but I'm a fan of WWE, and when constantly I can't just watch a show without it being hijacked every time this guy just comes out, it's irritating. So, anyway, now we're going to move on to SmackDown Live, to which we start out with my favorite tradition, he said sarcastically, of having a multi-person match and having every single person come out and cut a promo about how they're going to win. This is the most tired. This is probably the most tired cliche of WWE, if not one of the cliches. One of the most tired cliches. I hate these promos so much. I hate them. They're so predictable. There's nothing new happens. And to be quite honest, I only want to hear some WWE superstars pick up a mic and start talking. Everybody else, for the most part, I don't really want to hear them talk. Like, I love Becky. She's not the best talker. So, but then you get somebody like Natalya. I really don't care about hearing Natalya talk. I care about seeing her wrestle, because I think she's a really talented, underused wrestler that has never gotten her big break. And honestly, if she won the WWE Women's Championship, I wouldn't even be mad. But no, I definitely don't want to hear Alexa Bliss talk. I definitely don't want to hear Carmella talk. I mean, maybe if I would have heard Naomi say something, I wouldn't have minded, just because Naomi kind of never talks. And I'm glad I didn't hear Nikki Bella say anything, because I can't stand Nikki Bella. But honestly, the most boring way to kick off SmackDown, in my opinion. Not to have the Women's Championship, not to have that title kick off SmackDown. Don't get me wrong. But just that tired cliche of having every single person come down, I hate it so much. Next, we had The Miz versus Apollo Crews, and the match wasn't bad. I mean, Apollo Crews can have some really great matches. So can The Miz. And it just reminds me of the really crap match that we had at SummerSlam, not from the in-ring standpoint, but from a length standpoint of just, I mean, these guys can do good work. I would love to see them have another match for the IC title and have it actually mean something. But then again, they gave it to Ziggler for some reason. I mean, the match is going to be fine. It's a little forced. That's all. Bray Wyatt's promo was boring, and I zoned out. Next. The women's tag is fine, but we've also seen this, basically. We basically saw it at SummerSlam. So, it was okay. Now, this was almost... I'm moving on to the next match. This was almost the botch of the week for me, but I had to give it to the old fart segment because that was terrible. But this was almost a close second, just because I wanted to see this match, and I felt cheated. I don't care if they're saving the match for later. I don't care. We should have seen a match between two very talented teams. I mean, you could have even built up the injury during the match. You could have even built up, hey, Chad, maybe, he seemed to have tweaked his knee. And then they pull out a gut victory at the very end, and then the Usos turn, and then they target the knee. It can still work, but God, just... I like the Usos turning heel, but that was just a really rushed way to do it. And it lost its impact. I feel like if you have a hard-fought match and they lose, that makes a lot more sense. I feel like they turned heel and then lost and then turned heel again. Or you could still have them jump them before the match, but then have a match. That was just... It really frustrated me. Then we have this, what I can only assume is now going to be a weekly segment, and I don't know how I feel about this, about weird things happening with random people in the ring, a la the Milkman, and now this random woman that was in the ring with Fandango. I don't know. And then Kane comes in and chokeslams somebody and leaves. The best part about this is that it seems like people are behind Kane again. And thank God we have no more corporate Kane. I wouldn't mind personally seeing Kane have one last really big monster run. It doesn't have to be a heel run. He could be, after AJ wins the title off Ambrose, because please let him win the title off Ambrose. After Ambrose gets his rematch and fails because of whatever reason, via clean or shenanigans or whatever, you could then have Kane versus AJ Styles. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind at all. Because Kane has definitely paid his dues for this company. He's been here forever. And he's only been a legitimate threat, like, when he first got here, and then that run in, what was it? Was it 2010? Something like, whenever he feuded with Undertaker again, and ultimately won the feud finally, after he cashed in on Ray, I think. So yeah, that was 2010. I believe it was 2010. Don't quote me on that. Then we had the Hype Bros versus Slater and Rhino, and people keep trying to think of a name for Heath Slater and Rhino because, yeah, it is a really awkward. It's really long. It's a really long name to just keep saying Heath Slater and Rhino or Rhino and Heath Slater. It's like they need a catchy name, something. This was nothing really extraordinary. I called it. Basically, this is the problem with SmackDown Live now, is that SmackDown Live is not really all that unpredictable at all. Because I called it the second they said, if Heath Slater wins the entire tag team tournament, then he gets a contract. And I'm like, okay, so that means whoever he teams with, they're going to go all the way to the end at least and probably win that match. So it just kind of took me out at this point. I didn't really care. And the problem with this whole tag team tournament is that we have no reason to care about any of these teams either. They haven't been hyped up. They're now just instantly thrown into a title hunt. We don't get to know anybody. We have no reason to root for the Hype Bros. We have a reason to root for Heath Slater because we've seen him a bunch of times. We had time to connect with his new character and gimmick. But it's just rushed. That's a lot. That's what happens a lot of the time. Excuse me. Sorry. That's what happens a lot of times with SmackDown Live. I've found everyone kind of, everyone universally thinks that Raw doesn't need to be 3 hours. Raw doesn't need to be 3 hours. Raw does not need to be 3 hours. But every time I watch Raw, I'm basically satisfied. And then I watch SmackDown Live the next day, and everything kind of feels rushed. So, I don't know. I used to be one of the people that said, Raw does not need to be 3 hours. But then again, that was before the brand split. Now, I don't mind Raw being 3 hours. I kind of like it. And some hours may dip. Especially like, the second or third, it usually dips at some point. But, I mean, SmackDown always just kind of seems rushed to me now because they don't have as much time. And they have a lot going on with a tag team tournament and a new women's belt and a bunch of other stories going on. It just, I don't know. It just always seems rushed to me. Especially the ending of the show. Because I feel like last week ended abruptly, and then this week also ended very abruptly. And that's because they have a hard time when they have to stop. Raw can go 15 minutes over 10 o'clock. SmackDown has to be over at 9. And it's just weird. But getting back to business, AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose face off. I will say this about Dean Ambrose. A lot of people are now turning on Ambrose, saying he shouldn't be champion anymore, that he's boring, blah, 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 blah. I will say the character of Dean Ambrose is not boring. Some of his matches may be boring. The match at SummerSlam was definitely underwhelming, and I feel like maybe some of that was Dean Ambrose. Not completely, because it takes two to tango, but maybe it was kind of Ambrose. However, the character isn't boring. My issue with Dean Ambrose as a character, as champion, is that he's too goofy. He's too goofy. It was the same thing when he was chasing Seth Rollins back when Seth Rollins had the Money in the Bank, like 2 years ago. And then he pulled all those gags, and he had the hot dog cart, and he sprayed Rollins with green paint. Like, everyone was like, he's too goofy. I mean, it just comes off as a discount Steve Austin, and it's just, we like him better when he's unhinged, when he has a purpose, when he has drive. And right now, these little bits of him, like, doing stuff in the casino last week, him getting his, like, hair done, like, it makes me forget that Dean Ambrose is supposed to, he's supposed to be a badass. He's supposed to be a really tough dude. And listen, a lot of superstars have handcuffs. It could be argued that Daniel Bryan had handcuffs when he was still wrestling. CM Punk maybe had some handcuffs in the ring from an in-ring perspective. Dean Ambrose has talked openly on the Stone Cold podcast about how he was handcuffed at WrestleMania versus Brock Lesnar. So that's why when he said, that's why some of his threats and some of his boasting during last night's promo just kind of fell flat with me. Because he said, when people, it's something along the lines of, when people step into the ring with me, I take them to places they aren't ready to go, blah, 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 blah. No, you don't, Dean. No, you haven't. You haven't for a long, long, long time. You haven't done anything. You wrestle an average match. You wrestled an average match with Dolph Ziggler. You haven't really been that unpredictable or that thrilling probably since your rivalry with Seth Rollins, the one that I just mentioned. I remember, what was it? A SummerSlam, actually, ironically. That SummerSlam right after the Shield broke up when they had the Lumberjack match. That was probably, and the Money in the Bank match, the ladder match with him and Rollins. I think that was the last time I was really into Dean Ambrose like that. Don't get me wrong, I've been a fan, basically, since day one of him being in the WWE. I like Dean Ambrose, but in terms of, his threat last night of, when people get into the ring with me, I take them to places they aren't ready to go, or I basically him being unpredictable. But that's the problem. We have no reason to believe this. He's not been unpredictable for a long time. They could have changed that with SummerSlam, but he and Ziggler had a very basic match. And it had a very abrupt ending. And it wasn't interesting, and it was disappointing. So that's just my thing with Ambrose. That was my only thing with Ambrose. Other than that, he was terrific on the microphone last night. I made a joke in one of my tweets, was that he should audition to be the new Micro Machines guy. It's a little bit of a dated reference, but I'm an old soul. I don't care. Even though I'm a 90s kid. Hey. I thought Dean Ambrose was very good on the mic. He had another prop, which he really likes his props, doesn't he? But here the prop works. Here the prop actually works. It serves a purpose. I like that. That's fine. I don't care. He was very good on the mic. AJ held his own. I gotta talk about this, though. This is the second championship angle that has to revolve around crotch shots. I can't wait until Triple H fully takes over WWE and takes it away from Vince. This just reeks of Vince McMahon. Come on. First we had ring postitis that plagued the whole tag team championship angle. Now, last week we had AJ Styles hung up on a ring rope getting ring rope-itis. And now AJ Styles is kicking Dean in the balls. What is the fascination in the last few weeks with nut shots? Come on. Anyway, wrapping things up and bringing it back to SmackDown versus Raw. It's clear that Raw was this week's winner, but it wasn't by a large margin like last week. Just the last 30 minutes alone for Raw trumped the entire next 2 hours of SmackDown. And that was not the case this time. It was a little bit more even. Honestly, just SmackDown was not that interesting to me. Raw at least had a lot of complexity. It kept me interested. It wasn't that predictable with the Authority storyline. And, oh wait, I just realized this means there's no more Authority. Finally. It would have been better if they went away in a match, though. And I do not consider Roman Reigns versus Triple H at WrestleMania 32 to be the capper for the Authority angle. I refuse to. I refuse it. But that's it. We got the pop of the week. We got the botch of the week. We had Raw winning this week. Who knows what will happen next week, especially with SmackDown having their Backlash pay-per-view this Sunday. And stay tuned this Sunday, a little bit early in the day. I'm going to record predictions on my Sunday Smack Talk. It's going to be a very special Backlash-centric predictions video, so be on the lookout for that on Sunday. Until next time, I'm going to be back next week with another SVR podcast, again reviewing Raw and SmackDown, seeing who won for that week, and it's going to be a weekly thing. As I alluded to earlier, I may do another shooting range based on the Roman Reigns hate, or I could do it on something else, because honestly, it's not a video I'm thrilled about making. I'm actually a little bit concerned about how it's going to be perceived. At the same time, I really feel strongly about some of that stuff, so I may go ahead and do it anyway. But until next time, I've been your resident marksman, your professional psychopath, #future WWE champion, TJT. I'll talk to you guys on Sunday.